Kandle, thanks so much for joining us. It's a pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
So you just dropped your new EP, Birds, and you have an LP coming out soon. But before we even talk about that, why don't you take us all the way back and let us know how you got into music?
I got into music kind of by accident. I went to photography school out of high school, and I was working as a photographer and playing guitar in a band with my sister and an amazing artist named Louise Burns. And I just started writing a lot of songs, and I was always way too scared to sing them. So I never sang ever. And when the band kind of fell apart, I realized how much I missed it and how important music was to me. So I made an EP just for fun and to see if I could do it on my own. I guess I was about 19. And I posted it on Facebook. And right away, I had like 6 record deal offers on the table. And I was completely shocked
Wow. So
that happened.
when did you start writing? Was it right around then, or was it years before then, or did you just kind of take a liking to writing music in your late teens?
Early, like preteen years, I started writing poetry, and
Hmm.
then I started paying boys at school to teach me songs on guitar at lunchtime because I never
Uh-huh.
had a music lesson before. And I was like, "Can you teach me People Are Strange for $5?" And then I just kind of started collecting the skills individually, and then realized like, oh, this is how writing a song happens.
Yeah. So you were collaborating early on and and kind of finding your own way early on, getting kind of these little guys paying these guys for these mini sessions, huh?
Yeah,
Were-
a very strange way to go about it. And I also was very frustrated by the kind of sexist boys at my high school that didn't treat girls very well. And there was a lot of sexual abuse growing up for me. And one of their common moves was seducing young girls with music. Like, oh, I'll play You Wish You Were Here. I'll play your favorite song.
right.
Angered me so much that I was determined to become better than them. So if that was ever tried on me or my friends, I'd say, "Oh, well, can you play it as good as this?"
Yeah. I was about to say, or I was about you were paying some guys to show you some stuff on guitar, but high school guys, I'm sure some of them would have showed you a couple things for free, maybe.
Yeah, but I wanted to make it fair.
Right, right.
Like, this is a business transaction.
Right, exactly.
I don't want to owe you.
Did were you bringing your guitar to school, were they bringing their guitar to school, or both of you were kind of like set up at lunch or
I'm kind
break?
of embarrassed of how often I brought my guitar with me everywhere. I was a cheerleader with a guitar on her back at all times, and I wouldn't go anywhere without it. And I would play in like very annoying times and places, and like in the hallways. And I was just always playing. I don't think I noticed if people wanted to hear or not.
That's cool though. I mean, so obviously music was a part of your identity then. It wasn't, because when you initially said you started writing when you're 19 again, I was wondering if it was something that happened later in life. But obviously, this was a part of growing up for you. You were doing it all through high school, shamelessly walking through the halls with your guitar and playing and
So
in between.
cool.
In yeah. So so then you're writing poetry also. You're learning some guitar, and then you start writing again. You kind of refine your passion for it, and then post some stuff on Facebook. So what do you think did someone share it? Was it a public thing that you posted on Facebook and it just kind of picked up steam? Because getting 6 record offers or whatever it might have been just from a first post on Facebook is pretty epic.
Yeah, well, I was quite surprised as well. I think I definitely have kind of a weird and unique sound, being completely self-taught and never had a singing lesson in my life. So my voice is interesting because it's not technically correct. And
Uh-huh.
I think I just was doing something that people hadn't really heard before. But a huge contributing factor was that I moved to Montreal. Nobody was taking me seriously in BC, back where I live now. And
Mhm.
my dad being a like Canadian rock star, people just didn't want to even give me a chance. They're like, oh, you're just his kid, it doesn't matter. So I
Uh-huh.
thought if I moved somewhere like Quebec, where nobody knew who my dad was and nobody really even speaks English, that I might have a fresh start. And it was true. I came out of nowhere for them, and everything
Yeah.
that happened was not related to my father or his legacy.
Well, tell the American viewers or the non-Canadian listeners who might not be familiar with your dad, what your dad was about.
He is the front man of a band called 5440, very, very Canadian rock. um, they are still going. They just had their 40th anniversary as a band, original members. It's crazy. They still love each other. It's like the best relationship I've ever seen in my life.
That's
And
awesome.
definitely the only way Americans usually know of them is Hootie and the Blowfish started out as a 5440 cover band. So their biggest song, I Go Blind, is actually my dad's song that he wrote about my mom.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So I mean, you were raised with music in your blood and in the household.
Oh yeah. I was a road baby, lots of studios and festivals, and rock and roll was my entire childhood for sure.
So there's the roots of it, at least part of it. Is that where you think your passion for music at least started to grow from?
Yeah, a lot of it. Um, I loved I loved everything about it growing up, to be honest. And I wanted to have the same kind of life that my dad had, which was basically a very large extended family of musicians and crew and collaborators, and everybody was so close and had so much respect and love for each other. And that was the most appealing thing to me above all else. But unfortunately, I had the exact opposite thing happen in my career, and had no loyalty or people that stuck with me at all, and was just like badly mistreated. But my intentions for starting were to be like that, to create a community and have these relationships last a lifetime.
So along with these people that you were meeting early on, who you were kind of getting lessons from and kind of filling in the gaps of your skill set, did you ever just say, "Hey, Dad, can you show me how to do this?" Or did you know how to do that? Did your dad ever help you out with any of your stuff?
Nah, he's pretty like, I mean, I would get him to help me in the studio from time to time, and that's how I learned to engineer and produce things myself,
Hmm.
which is very lucky because I could just observe and take notes every time he was
Sure.
recording. But in terms of like business and how to do things, like he's very classic, like 80s rock guy. Like he's not hands on, you know,
Uh-huh.
everything management takes care of, and like social media, excuse me, what? Like
Uh-huh.
not very current, I would
Right,
say.
right. Like most dads
Yeah.
nowadays.
He's still a dad. He rocks, but he's still a dad.
Right, right. Well, that's super cool that you grew up in that sort of environment and provided some inspiration for you. And yeah, they say, I think I think it's a biblical quote or something like that. Not to get dramatic, but sometimes you have to leave your place of birth to be recognized as a prophet. They say, or something like that, right? Not that musicians are prophets, or not, not most of
Sure
them
we
anyway.
are. No.
But yeah, but you know what I mean. Sometimes you got to leave the hometown to be recognized because it's too hometowns get too small maybe, or too familiar. So you need a fresh pair of eyes on your music or ears to actually hear it from a new point of view.
Oh, absolutely. And I loved doing that because returning back on tours after that, people would say the classic sexist typical thing of like, wow, you're actually good.
I know. It's funny. Not even just who, regardless of who I'm talking to. I always sometimes act the word actually. I think you throw it in just as like a softener or something, but it can actually be received really negatively like that. You know what I mean? Because sometimes when I hear it, I'm like, yeah, actually. But sometimes I find myself using that word accidentally too, and it's not a complimentary word when you're giving someone a compliment. You know, it's kind of a backhanded compliment.
Yeah, I'm currently working on a cartoon series for fun of just sexist moments in the music industry, and all my musician friends are just sending me so many ideas, and that's one that keeps coming up. Is
That's
like,
a good
"Oh,
idea.
actually good, or you actually play."
Yeah. Is it going to be an animated cartoon or is it going to be like still shots?
Yeah,
Or
they're just drawing. I just
yeah.
posted a few for fun, and then people just love them. And someone started talking to me about doing a book, and I was like, okay, this is
Yeah. Yeah. I was going to say, friend of my fiance's that has an Instagram where she just throws, it's kind of like dark, sarcastic humor, and she
cool.
put
What's
out
it?
a book.
I'm gonna
I'll have to look up the name of it, but it's
send
I think a lot of them are awards, you know, like award for this or
it,
that.
like awards for good boys or something. Is that
Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah,
I
yeah.
follow
It's
that?
there you go. Yeah, it's her boss's daughter, I think,
Oh,
and so she got that she got published, I think, and put a book together, which is awesome. You know, it's awesome. You can if you do these things like piece by piece, like I think you know certain people have made books out of just like all their tweets or whatever. You know, it's like you just you know you do a few drawings, you know, a month, and then you got a book deal eventually. So back to the music, you moved to Quebec and things you start getting recognized in a different way. So tell us a little bit about how that went.
At first it went really well. My first show ever was like a huge festival with like Jack White and Nick Cave, and I was
Awesome.
like, oh my God, this is
Yeah.
so cool.
Yeah.
And I started touring Europe and just doing tons of media, and things were going very well. And then I kind of found out that my manager had been very dishonest and done some very shady things. And then I found out that my record deal was very bad and I was basically being robbed dry,
Yeah.
and everything kind of fell apart for me. And after that, I ended up signing with someone much worse who was very abusive and didn't let me record or tour or release for 4 years.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, so I went through like every unlucky possible thing a solo female artist can go through, and I lost everything and almost didn't continue. And when I freed myself from my all my contracts finally last year, I just basically said fuck it and started recording and releasing constantly because I
Yeah.
felt I'd been so held back for so long.
Yeah.
So my first ever independent release EP, I recorded an all new record at the start of the pandemic, and I recorded the Birds EP. I basically recorded like 80 songs this year, and I've released
Wow.
30 so far.
That's epic. I
That's
mean,
what you can do when you're independent. You know, I've had
yeah.
these powerful,
And
scary men own me since I was 19, and now
and you
I'm
must have had so much just pent up. I mean, you maybe were you writing? Hopefully, I don't know what you can say legally if you were with shady people. So let's say you weren't writing while you were with all those people, but you obviously had a lot of time to put stuff into your head during that time. So 30 songs. I mean, that's crazy. That's you know, what's it been like? You know, feeling that freedom again and being liberated from that, and then it's just starting to you know get all this stuff out because I know it feels so good to just put music out. And if you've been kind of in a situation where you weren't able to do that, and then all of a sudden just pouring you know streaming music out of you, pun intended, I guess. How's that been and how's that felt?
It definitely feels good. I feel empowered for the first time in a very long time, and I love having that freedom. But it's hard to let go. Like when you've been abused and mistreated, and you know you trusted the wrong people.
Sure.
It's very hard to let go. I got a bad taste in my mouth. I got a chip on my shoulder. I'm bitter about it, but
Sure.
I try every day really hard to let go of that and focus on the present and what I can do in the future and not hold on to all that trauma, because I spent many months just in bed taking antidepressants and anxiety medication, and just I was done. And
Right.
I decided that wasn't going to be my path, and I wasn't ready to throw in the towel, and I had a lot more that I still wanted to do. And I picked myself up and built my company as an independent artist and assembled my team, and got the funding, and I'm back at it fully as the boss.
Hell yeah. And it's probably therapeutic in itself, you know. I mean, that's probably the best therapy that you can give yourself is empowering yourself and putting out music and doing something you're passionate about. And what you can't let go of, and you should let go of what you can, because it's just crazy weight. But what you can't, you can use in your music.
Yeah.
Write about that chip on your shoulder, you know.
I know. I'm like
Vent about it.
consciously trying to stop writing very angry songs.
Yeah.
Let's move on. Let's move on. We've done that. We've called him out. We've called him out. Like
Uh-huh.
very therapeutic.
Right. Therapeutic and real and authentic. So.
Oh yeah.
So tell us about you said, you released like around 30 songs, but your most recent EP is called Birds, and you did this with Kendall Carson. Tell us a little bit about this.
That was a very last minute project just for fun. It's 6 songs of Neil Young covers.
Awesome.
And I've actually been lucky that I have been very busy in the last year, so I'm not just sitting at home wishing I had something to do.
Yeah.
But it was around Christmas time, and Kendall was visiting me, and we just had a few drinks and started playing Neil Young songs. And she's one of the best fiddle players in the world. Like, she'll just make you weep when she plays. And we just looked at each other and thought, should we just record these and make an EP and release it on New Year's Day? Why not?
Yeah.
And the kind of freedom that you can have when you're independent, because 100% a label would shut that down. Like,
right.
Record and release something in 3 weeks that we don't have a chance to approve or do anything. But I have like a good community of female musicians here that I love and I love working with, and we just like doing things, as we say, that are good for the soul.
Yeah.
This is one of those things, just 3-part harmonies, acoustic guitar, fiddle, just singing these songs that we grew up on, that we love, and just doing it for us, just for fun.
Sure.
It felt really good.
Yeah, I mean, that's why you do music, because you love it. And what a way to inject some good vibes back into your feelings about music. Tell us about the LP that you are working on and we hope to see soon.
The LP was made in a very crazy way. I was basically living in London, England, and I came back because I had a Canadian grant to record to Vancouver, and I brought my British producer with me, and this was the beginning of March. And when we started, life was normal. We were at restaurants, we were hugging and dancing, going out. And within like the first 4 days of recording, everything started to get crazy. People were fighting for toilet paper. It was absolute chaos.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the creative decisions of the record were based on the pandemic, which was really interesting and strange. Like, I wanted to do like Supreme style backing vocals, 3 girls around 1 mic.
Awesome.
And that's usually something you would do at the end, that's like the last thing that you add on. But we were starting to get orders of everyone go home, self-isolate, quarantine. The girls said it's got to be today or nothing, and all we had was bass and drums. I hadn't even sung yet. Wow. So on the spot, I wrote these parts for them that filled up the songs in such a unique and interesting way that it kind of set the tone for the rest of the record. We're like, these are the hooks, these are the parts, this is the sound. Yeah. And so everything we filled in afterwards was based on like who was available.
Right.
After 5 or 6 days, it was just the producer, the engineer, and myself, and we were quarantined in the recording studio. And everybody thought we were crazy because no one was doing that. And the owner of the studio like let us just have it because he's like, no one else is coming in. You can stay here if you want. Like,
that's awesome. Yeah.
So we stayed and worked until it was done, and then life changed drastically, didn't it?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because sometimes those things could be viewed as limiting, but sometimes putting, parameters on what you're doing makes it easier. It's like these are the rules, and so follow this blueprint, and your blueprint was so these a lot. It sounds like a lot of these songs really center around kind of these chanty kind of vocal parts, which sounds cool. I'm looking forward to hearing it.
Yeah, very like classic 60s kind of gang vocal parts. A lot of good
Yeah,
answer stuff. It's really cool.
yeah, a few
I felt
months.
lucky that, the scariest time of everybody's life when that was first happening and nobody knew what to do, I could just shut out the outside world and be in the studio for 15 hours a day and go like,
Totally. Yeah, you had a purpose, and it was
yeah,
something you loved doing, which is, yeah, it's a blessing to have that in a time when a lot of people were like, what am I supposed to do right now?
yeah.
And
Like I think I'll learn a language and then
right,
don't.
yeah, yeah, exactly. It's
But
like
as
summer
soon as I
vacation when
left
you're
the
a kid.
studio, I was like, oh God.
Yeah.
Had to move back in with my parents for a while. I was like, I guess I'm not going back to England. What do I do? And
A lot of people did that. Yeah, a lot of artists have told me they did that, and just a lot of friends. I know a lot of people moved back home, or or just moved out from wherever they were because they're living in a city, and they're like, why am I living in a city right now? There's no point for me to be living here right now.
totally.
So that's exciting. So when do you have kind of an estimate of when you want to drop that?
Yeah, the first single came out in November, which was a Bond theme song, as we call it. That,
Ooh.
that's how we went about writing it. I
Hmm.
always wanted to do one, and I realized, why wait to see if they'll ever ask me? I'll just
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes that's the best way. Show them you can do one.
Yeah, we did a very Bond video, which is up for a Canadian Music Video Award now, which is exciting.
Awesome. Congrats.
Thank you. And then the next single is mid-February, and we're hoping the whole album will be out mid-May.
Awesome. Well, it looks like you are killing it. And so congrats, and we're stoked to have you back. Sounds like you've had quite the journey so far. And it
Yeah.
sounds like you're resilient and passionate. So tell us, for artists who are listening, we like to end the interview by asking, if you had one piece of advice to give to aspiring artists, what would it be?
I think it would be, I mean, in general, you should always trust your gut and don't make any decisions when the power dynamic is off. Don't sign with a label because you think you need their money. Don't get into business with anyone because you feel desperate, because that is just a recipe for disaster, and they know that going into these deals. They know what they hold over you, and it's not worth it most of the time. So that is definitely my best advice, because I've made that mistake 2 times now and it is not good.
I think that's great advice for anybody in any industry, right? Regardless of the music industry or whatever, that you shouldn't make important decisions when you don't have any sort of leverage or anything. I think
Yeah. And
I think that
especially
goes.
artists, like they think, I remember how it felt having all those deals on the table. Like I made it. Like this is the goal, is the label.
Yeah,
You don't realize what you're giving away, and essentially it's the world's worst loan. Like no other business model would work like that, where you give away your product, they own you, and everything they spend you owe back 100%.
right,
So it's
right,
not like it, the label is not buying you dinner, that goes on your bill. The label is not hiring a PR team, you are. It's
right,
bad bank, really.
right.
So
That's a
artists
great
don't,
great metaphor. Yeah,
young artists especially do not realize that. They're like, oh, the label's flying me out to LA. It's like, no, you're flying yourself out and you're going to really have to pay that back.
yeah. It's funny you mentioned that. I just watched recently maybe a month or two ago. It was the story of that guy who managed Backstreet Boys and NSYNC. And I don't know if you've seen this documentary, but you should watch it because
Oh,
what did I watch it on?
I love music docs. So
Just look it up. It might have even been on YouTube or something like that. We might have found it on YouTube, and but it was basically NSYNC was just exploding. They were all over TRL #1. I think they had like the #1 record, and they finally like sat down to dinner with this guy to see like what their check was going to look like after all the work they had done. And I think he gave them something like ridiculous, like single-digit thousands each, and they're saying everything that you said. Everything they thought was expensed to whoever the label or the manager was all expensed to them, and he was paying himself all the money and everything. And he even owned the name NSYNC, and he had himself as a member of NSYNC for legal reasons. So he was like, it was really eye-opening. It was a good documentary though, so if you want to check it out, just look at it. You'll be
artist did watch that.
yeah. I think Jared Leto had a doc about it too for 30 Seconds of Mars a few years back. It's on iTunes. But basically 30 Seconds from Mars, also another huge band. And I think they still owe the label like millions of dollars or something like that, at least at the time of the documentary. So crazy stuff.
Yeah.
Good lessons.
First being like, yeah, we'll let you go after you've paid off this $300,000 debt.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I couldn't eat for the years that I was paying that off. Like every royalty check, everything went to that, not to me. And I was like, oh.
Or some artists have these deals where it's like, oh, you have to give us 6 albums or something like that. And it's like, some artists don't realize how long it could take to make 6 albums. And it's like, you won't be free from this contract until you complete 6 whole albums. So.
They want it for the world. And like, I think my first contract said 100 years after death, they would own all my stuff. Great grandchildren wouldn't get like royalties from anything I've done. I'm like,
wow.
what is this business?
Bringing it backward.